Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Thank you for stopping by. Today we are going to be learning how to paint watercolor cloudscapes. And of course, there are a million ways to paint clouds. This is just one of them. So keep that in mind as we're going through the video, and hopefully this is a fun jumping off point for you. For materials, you'll want a 140-pound watercolor paper because we are using quite a bit of water. You'll also want some washi tape to tape down the paper and prevent it from curling, again, because we're using quite a bit of water. You'll also want water and a round brush. I'm using a number 12. I actually really like that for making big fluffy clouds, so that one's a really great option. And since we're doing an October sky, I thought I'd choose an earthy palette to really create that, October atmosphere. And for that, I'm using kind of a deep purpley blue, a golden yellow, and then a deep brownish red. Oh, and almost forgot paper towels. You always want some paper towels. All right, let's get started. So for this cloudscape, we are going to be painting in layers, and I'm going to start this first layer with my lightest color. So in this case, it's that golden yellow that I mentioned. So what I've done is I've loaded my brush with water and taken some of that yellow, and now I'm just making the tops of my clouds. And I don't want to paint them super close together. I'm kind of spreading them out. We want to leave a lot of space to work with because that gives us room to blend and play with the colors without making things too heavy. Now that I've got my initial cloud lines placed, I'm taking a lot of water on my round brush and I'm working it into the bottom of those cloud lines and drawing the color down until it's almost white. You can barely see it. Another thing that I want to point out is that I'm doing fluffy clouds, so I'm kind of moving my brush in these small little circular motions because it gives this subtle fluffy texture that you see in those big clouds. And as you're blending out clouds, just remember that if you kind of blend the top out too much, you can certainly add in more color. That's just fine. Just try not to overdo it because I think the key to making the clouds turn out like clouds and feel light and airy like they are. Even the heaviest ones they're up in the air, right? So is to not use too much color. It really a light touch with clouds is the way to go. Now that I've got my lightest clouds laid down, I'm going to switch over to my darkest color, which is that dark purpley blue color. And I'm not going to load a bunch of color onto my brush. I'm adding a lot of water in here, as you can see, but I'm going to lay it down in, kind of that circular cloud-like formation between, like in the white spaces in between the yellow clouds. And we're going to kind of fill that in a little bit. And I'm not going to take up all of the white space because, again, we want clouds to have space to breathe. You always need more space to blend and to have lighter spots. That's what gives your clouds dimension. All right, so I filled in quite a bit of the white space with the purple color, and I'm gonna add a little purple right on top of this yellow cloud over here because I just want a little darker purple area, that's all. And that looks good. I like the balance there, so I'm gonna let this dry before we do our next layer. Okay, this first layer is dry to the touch, so we get to move on to our second layer. For the second layer, I'm taking the red-brown color and I'm going to be painting in clouds in the remainder of the white spaces. Now again, I'm going to try my best not to take up all of the white space because we still want to leave just little slivers of bright spaces, but I'm going to use the remainder of the white space as kind of a guide for placing my red-brown clouds. And you'll notice that as I'm laying this red-brown cloud, I'm also mixing in some yellow and purple just to play around with color. And you want to blend things in, but I kind of have this rule when I'm making clouds that I stop blending like 4 or 5 strokes before I think I should, because you don't want to overwork your clouds. Otherwise they will look heavy and mangled and not have that airy look. Something that I wanted to mention specifically for viewers who are maybe a little newer to watercolor is that we're using two main techniques for this painting. One of those techniques is the wet on wet technique, which is what I'm doing with this cloud here. I'm adding wet paint to create a soft blend of color. And I really like to do this for creating interesting color combinations and pretty but softly blended pockets of color within my clouds. The second technique is the wet on dry technique, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's applying wet paint to a dry layer of paint. So basically, this whole second layer is a great example of wet on dry technique. By letting the first layer dry, when we add the second layer of paint, those colors aren't going to bleed into the first layer. They're going to just lay over them. And this is a really great technique for creating, well, layers, of course, but also with layers comes that depth. So it's perfect for a cloudscape. All right, and it looks like I have one more largish white space that I want to fill in, so I'm going to lay down one more reddish brown cloud, and then we'll start doing some fine tuning. All right, so I've covered all of the major white spaces that I want to cover. So now I'm just going to take a look here and see if there are any other areas that I want to add another layer of color. It can be any color, it doesn't have to be the reddish brown color, just to maybe balance out the color scheme or to add shadow somewhere. Just kind of assess that to see what looks good to your eye. For this painting that I'm doing, I really thought there should be a yellow cloud down here. I think it kind of points to that bright center and helps create depth. I also want to darken up this red-brown cloud a little bit too. Okay, that looks good. Now, the final step that I have for this is to just soften the edges of the clouds. Now to do this is really simple and very, very subtle, but I just load my round brush with some water and I kind of make little swirling motions to soften the edges of the clouds and kind of very lightly connect those colors. I don't want the white space to be filled in with a lot of color, but just to tease out some subtle color and kind of blend those areas in the background so it looks really soft. All right, those clouds look pretty nicely blended. I'm very happy with how these turned out. They're nice and light and airy, but have that earthy, mysterious October feel that I personally adore. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for joining me today. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for creating with me today. Until next time, take care.